round one and all as we celebrate the magic of women in cinema at our Film Coven. We're your hosts, Kelli Mehan
and Melissa Woody, and today we are inducting the 80s princess, Molly Ringwald. Kelli, how are you feeling about today's episode?
I feel like Lorelai Gilmore in season 6. It's when she... a great way to start the episode. Season 6, I'd say it's in the back half, so it's in the late teens, early 20s of episodes, and she hosts the birthday party for Luke's daughter, April, and she goes, "Girls, I need to introduce you to someone really special to me. Her name is Molly Ringwald."
You're about to meet someone very special to me. Her name is Molly Ringwald. Now, I know you don't know who that is, but suffice it to say, she is my generation's Audrey Hepburn, and I know you don't know who that is either, but trust me, you're gonna love her.
That's how I feel. And it's really funny because I didn't grow up with Molly Ringwald. She's someone that I've come to love through my cinema journey, because I feel like this set of movies that we're going to talk about today, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink, we grew up in a time where they were referenced constantly, I feel like. So you had heard about them even if you hadn't seen them. And I very much hadn't seen them. So in my 20s, I'm having to go back and watch them all again. And it was probably a real different experience than if I had been able to experience them in my teens. But I just have grasped onto 2 of them. One I have major issues with, and I'm pretty sure it's the same one that you have major issues with. But Melissa, how did you come to sort of know these Molly Ringwald movies that we're going to talk about today?
I did grow up with all 3 of these. Had them all on VHS and I think DVD when it eventually became on DVD. And yeah, these were definitely staples for me at sleepovers and just ones I did rewatch all the time. Yeah, some of them have aged poorly, to say the least.
Some of them belong to live in the 80s, it feels like.
I think there's still value, or that's not maybe the word I want to use. Value. There's things to still be gained out of them. Yeah, I still feel like there's still enjoyment and things to take from these movies. But yes, there's definitely, it's also very much a time capsule as well.
That's what it is. Shall we kick into the one we're very obviously talking about, which is 16 Candles?
They fucking forgot my birthday.
Yes.
So you said you grew up with this one, but I grew up with this one from references. I feel like, I can't believe it, they fucking forgot my birthday. Is one of those movie lines that even if you haven't seen the movie, you know of. And then, of course, one of the reference machines that's influenced my life so greatly is Family Guy. There's the segment of Peter being Samantha with the Jake Ryan moment at the end, because I think that first scene and that last scene, or as I'm talking about, are the best parts of the movie. Everything in between, what a fucking shit show. It was so gutting, Melissa, because I watched it a couple years ago for the first time, and I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for? And I really thought it was, okay, Kelli, you're watching it at a time where, you're maybe not ready to take it in. Maybe you were pissy that day or PMSing or whatever. And then I watched it again recently. I'm like, no, that's just a huge oof. Mel, what are your feelings throughout your watches?
This was one I did enjoy when I was younger. I don't think I understood maybe some of things that were happening, because I definitely watched this probably at too young of an age. And I haven't seen it, all 3 of these movies I haven't seen since I was a kid and a teenager. So it's been a long time since I've revisited these. And so going into the movie, I was like, okay, I just remember Jake Ryan being a total hottie. That was my only real memory of this movie. It was I think the soundtrack's good and Jake Ryan is a hottie, and I had somebody very similar growing up that kind of looked like him. So I feel like I had an association a little bit with this movie and my real life crush that looked like him. Yeah. He's probably one of the worst problems of the movie.
He's trash. He's a trash person.
Yeah. This movie, I don't know. It's this weird thing where it's okay, is John Hughes really trying to do a camp thing with the humor? But it's if he did, it didn't work. Because I was really trying to understand what are we doing here with the humor? I don't know if it's just like to highlight and elevate of like Samantha's life, of like just how absurd it is to be a teenager, and like just maybe emphasize her awkwardness or something. Because I think this movie would be, I mean, it's already like a trash movie, really. Like, it's not, I don't really like rate it very high or really recommend it to people, but like I think the only saving grace of this movie is Molly Ringwald, because I feel like she's like the most grounded piece of the movie because everything else is just like just the casual racism, the casual sexism, and like the misogyny and sexual assault. Everything is just so like la-di-da, and it's like, what are we doing here?
I think very much of what you said, like this is a time capsule of a movie, and we watched the documentary that Andrew McCarthy just did about Bratz, and it highlighted a lot of the points I want to make about doing this episode. Is that this is the emergence of youth cinema. This is a point in time in the 80s, this is 84, and then we're talking Breakfast Club 85, and then we're talking Pretty in Pink 86. So for Molly Ringwald, what an absolute slayage of movies. That's modern verbiage, but that's what happened. Like, that is box office gold. So I can see how this is sort of reflecting what it is in time. And I have the same feelings when I watch things like Animal House, when I watch things like Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah, they're things that really have not aged well, but I like to think that we can be a modern movie-going audience that can watch these things with a bit of intelligence and go, okay, this is what we found funny at the time. Aren't we glad that we don't think that anymore, and that we're progressing beyond some of these horrible stereotypes and making fun of minorities and making fun of women? And I like to think with that aspect of it. So when I watch things like 16 Candles today, I'm like, okay, that's not great, but I can take away the father-daughter relationship and go, that's fantastic. Like, how cool is it that in 84 we had this conversation between Samantha and her dad that's really heartfelt, and do you like this boy? Like, yes. Like, I think this, and in Pretty in Pink as well, we see the same. I like that we're getting probably what is an unconventional for film at this time, father-daughter relationship. Because I think even in movies and TV, it's very like, la la la, my little girl, she doesn't like boys. Like, we don't talk about that. I like the mature approach that was in these films. So that's where I'm kind of landing with the movie. I'm like, okay, not this, but hey, this. You know what I mean? And as you sort of said, it gives very much first movie. And I think John Hughes grows a lot as a writer and then director for Breakfast Club. I think this is like a first pancake, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So apparently John Hughes literally saw a headshot of Molly Ringwald and based the entire script on her specifically. It was a good first attempt maybe in like this genre that he kind of really ended up kind of defining a bit.
Yes.
Because like you said, this really was the first time in like, if we review and look at like cinema history, this was the first time where we were seeing these stories of teenagers and like their problems and that they mattered. And I do appreciate that like through all three of these films, he takes their problems and makes them actually like matter, and that these kids do have some type of intelligence. Maybe not as much in this movie, but like you said, I think this was a first shot at this genre, and I think it improves as it goes on.
Let's talk Molly Ringwald specifically in this movie as the character of Samantha, and I really like how I think you hit the nail on the head with she's our grounded character and everything else is really heightened. All the family is really extra. It's the sister's wedding and she's been a little bit pushed to the side. It's
sorry.
Yeah, she is pushed to the side. They fucking forgot her birthday.
Sorry.
It's 2016. No, it's good. So yes, this family event is happening with the sister's wedding. Everything else really does seem so heightened about her, but I like that she's going about her day, and the first part that stands out to me is when she sees the popular pretty girl in the shower and looking at the boobs. It's the 80s. We're showing it off. Definitely, we see these sorts of shower scenes throughout these sorts of films, so I'm not shocked by it. Is it great? No. But is being envious of other girls your age about differences in developing, that part rings very true to me, because I think this is very much a point in time we're comparing ourselves to other girls who's got so far sexually, whose body is developing at the age, who's getting attention from people that they want to be getting attention from. A lot of that and her, comparison and feeling a bit ugly duckling-ish is what I sort of get from it. A lot of blonde, pretty girls in these high school movies, and I forget which one's which.
The blonde, pretty girl in this movie is Caroline. Is who she's thinking. Oh, she has it all. And as you see throughout the movie, maybe not. I think Samantha's character is very much. It's a very relatable character, you know, at this age, you just feel so insecure and like just anxiety ridden with things. And I think it's pretty funny. It's kind of one of the opening scenes with her, the note exchange of like,
that's a throwback.
Yes. Just note exchanging. I don't really know if that really happens anymore. Yeah. Just like, who do you want to like do it with? And like, have you done it? That kind of thing. And I just love how this whole thing kind of sparks the whole thing with Jake Ryan and Samantha, and like they really like never have a conversation. Like, but somehow this just does it. This is enough.
It's
she wants to have sex with me? Cool, I'm in.
Done.
I'm interested. And I'm just like, okay, dude.
To talk about Caroline, like I wrote in my notes, I'm like, this girl did nothing. She did nothing to deserve everything that happens to her in this movie. She's just going about her day. She's just like a typical high school girl who thinks she's got a hot boyfriend. She maybe has a couple too many at a party, as we sort of all did. But she's not antagonistic. She's not a bitch. She's just fine. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I don't know how much we want to get into it, but I mean, she definitely is like a victim of like sexual assault, just very problematic things with like her being unconscious and like Anthony Michael Hall's character like taking photos with her, and then they supposedly have intercourse, but it didn't seem like either of them remember, so okay.
So it's so funny that our lead, as you sort of said, is like this hunky guy, and like it's never our intention on this show to be like men suck and women are the best. That's never the tea.
No.
That's never what it is. But in this instance, like...
Yeah.
Okay, it really hurt me, Melissa, because I've had a partner treat me in a very similar way to an extent of feeling disposable. Of feeling like, I don't want her anymore, you can have her. Has actually said those words to a common friend. So when I'm watching this, like a lot of that pain is still quite there and still happening. So like that part hurt for me. And as you sort of said, like the sexual assault of this girl, it's murky yuck times in the 80s. It really is. To move on from that, I do like the scene in the car between Samantha and Anthony Michael Hall before all this happens, when they're at the party, they're sitting there. What John Hughes is doing really well throughout all these films is conversations between teenagers that feel really authentic, that feels like the kind of conversations you are having at a time about, here's how I feel and here's where I'm at, and oh, this person has this and why can't I be this? I feel like a lot of that's good. I
liked the scene as well until... Again, Anthony Michael Hall like jumps on her, and I'm sorry to keep being negative, but like
no, but that's what it is, and we're gonna kick off it now, and then we're gonna get into the good ones soon.
Yes, but the conversation that they're having before that it is genuine and it's sweet, and I do think it's one of the highlights of the movie because also they're the only two of the cast that's actually a teenager. Like everyone else is in their 20s. And I think that's also saying something too, where like, again, it adds a more authentic just vibe that they're actually like of age as a teenager. And then also just like the conversation they're having was, I thought, really well done. A scene that I really enjoy from this movie, specifically about Samantha, is it's at the dance. And she, you know, just, I don't even really fully remember what was going on, but she like ran out of the dance and like is upset. And I think Caroline and some other girls passed by, if I'm remembering correctly, or it was just some random girls, but they like pass by and they're like, how are you doing? And like she's like crying and she's like, oh, I'm good. Like, but like she's fully crying, but she's like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. And I don't know, I found that very relatable because like I feel like I was definitely somebody in high school that I just really didn't feel like I fit in, and like I didn't really enjoy my time at dances and things like that, so that probably happened to me. And so like I found a lot of like relatability with that scene, and I thought it's very like true to the character of Samantha because she just feels like very misunderstood and not listened and heard and obviously forgotten with her birthday. She's just like, I want somebody to like notice me, and like those strangers kind of did, but she's like, but not really at the same time because they like didn't notice she was crying. They just kind of like went on their way.
A lot of Molly Ringwald's sort of star power does shine through in this film, as you're sort of saying, in the delivery is really good. She's got a great way of, as we were sort of been saying, portraying an authentic teenage sort of experience. And the other one is, I think, a scene we see, even if you haven't seen the movie, and see parody again, when she gives her underwear to Anthony Michael Hall. So you see that, like with the him holding the panties up in the bathroom full of guys, like you've seen that referenced in other things. But she's the cherry on top with like, I can't believe I gave my panties to a geek.
I can't believe I gave my panties to a geek.
Like, it's the way she punctuates these words. I'm like, she's what I imagine a typical 80s teen to be. Like, she is defining of an American 80s teen. And they talked about that a little bit in the Bratz documentary about how people really started to see themselves. We're talking about youth culture and more culture, being able to see yourself on screen as Molly Ringwald being the avatar for a lot of regular girls.
I just have a few random facts and then one more rant. So this movie literally is like, how do you pick up chicks? Literally. Like, you literally just pick them physically up. Because that happens a few different times in the movie. Anyways, because I was like, is that on purpose? Because I don't like this. Movie, bad. Soundtrack, great.
Soundtrack. Best soundtrack of the three we're going to talk about today, for sure for me. When Young Americans kick in, I'm like, here we go. I love it.
The soundtrack's great. Fun little fact that I learned was, so the final scene with the birthday cake.
Yes.
It is a cardboard cake.
Oh, I hate it even more now, Melissa. That is like one of the few things. I'm like, that's a tender, candlelit, beautiful moment. Fuck.
I'm sorry. I just thought that was funny. And also, supposedly they like were going to do a sequel at some point called 32 Candles, but it never happened, and I'm glad it didn't. But
there's not enough there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's this couple days of this young girl's life snapshot moment. You don't need to keep going back to that.
No, I agree. I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, okay. But again, I feel like they always try to make sequels out of pretty much anything and everything. Also, just some interesting casting things. Viggo Mortensen almost was Jake Ryan, which would have been wild. And Molly Ringwald was actually like she was like, ooh, like I hope he gets it, because she was like very attracted to him.
Well, who isn't?
Exactly.
Like, I can't imagine. Like, I can't think of any iconic Jake Ryan lines, but like, where was Gondor? Like, I can't imagine that intensity.
I can think of one, but it's bad. Sorry.
Hit me with it.
It's the sexual assault scene where he's like, I have Caroline upstairs passed out, and I can violate her 10 different ways if I wanted to. And it's just like,
I can get a piece of ass anytime I want. Shit, I got Caroline in the bedroom right now, passed out cold. I can violate her 10 different ways if I wanted to.
Ah! What? Like, Kelly, I was so upset when I heard that. Like,
yeah.
I was a little nervous going into this one, because I was just like, I know it hasn't aged well from just like, people who've more recently watched it than me, but like, I didn't realize honestly how bad it was gonna be.
Oh, the audacity of just lines like that in it,
yeah. And I was just like, I was a little shocked, honestly, and I was just like, I can't believe I watched this as like a child. So yikes. That's all.
Yikes is just the best. Yeah.
Sorry.
Happy days. Let's move on to something that like is a 2-star to me to something that's a 5-star, deserves its classic status. Let's talk The Breakfast Club. Melissa, this is probably the most famous one of what we're going to talk about today. It's the one that's aged the best in what we're going to talk about today, in my opinion. And it is just absolute pure movie magic. It's part of Criterion. It rightfully deserves so. I think this is one that is hyped up and deserves the hype if you haven't seen it. Like, this is the one I watched a few years ago and have rewatched the most of what we're talking about today, and every time I watch it I still get like first watch jitters. Like, I get excited when they start pulling up to the school, and I really enjoy the hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, whatever it is, of this film. I don't feel the time, which is a big saying for me. Like, I don't feel the time at all, which is so funny because it's a bottle episode. Like, it is one room, one day, one moment, real time feeling looking movie.
I think this is very much a modern classic, or just a classic. I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I think this one definitely has aged well compared to the other two. I think this one very much taps into what I think all three of these movies are trying to do about, like, just universality of being a teenager, and
yes.
again maybe feeling like other. I think it really taps into that specifically the most, probably, out of the three. But yeah, I mean, the soundtrack, the fashion, the quotes, like it really does hit. And I was really excited to revisit it just because it's been a really long time since I've had seen it. It was a much good palate cleanser from her last movie.
What are your impressions of our Molly Ringwald character of Claire? Because it's a great way, as you sort of said, like, everyone sort of sees themselves in this movie. I think you can pick out a character you are leaning towards, and that is very much the high school experience. But then it does the great job of flipping it on its head, where at the end of the movie, it's like, when you look at us, this is just what you see, but we're more than that. And that's a great way of summarizing that, hey, you may feel this way in high school now, but you can be much more than that, and you can grow.
She's that typical archetype, stereotype of the popular girl. And, you know, as the movie unfolds, we realize that there's more to her, and she's layered and complicated. And that's with all of our characters here. We meet all of them with that label at first.
She can be described as the girl that you grew up hating. You know, she's the prom queen, homecoming queen, filthy rich, all, you know, perfect clothing and everything. And she's one of these she looks real superficial, not very intelligent. And she appears that way, but she turns out not to be that way.
As the movie, you know, peels back the layers of each character, we really see that they all share the same feelings and insecurities and anxieties, and that they all kind of feel that otherness. And there's just something about that that's very comforting. And I think it's also very realistic too, because I think in high school specifically, I think that is the time where you're very much feeling like lonely and that otherness, maybe more so than other parts of your life. I think it's that time of life of, like, you're building your identity, you're finding yourself, creating yourself, kind of thing. It very much gave me a little bit of, like, Regina George, in the sense of, like, she's that popular, quote-unquote, mean girl style character, but, like, again, as both of those stories unfold, it's like, okay, there's more to this person. There's a human behind all of these people. They all have a story of, like, why they're here specifically in the scenario, but even just like beyond that, I guess, too.
Claire's probably the character I relate to the most, or at least aspects. The princess label, very much so. Not just for wealth, but, like, that's just a character trope I've been given, I think, because the love of Disney princesses won. And probably the only child. I would be surprised if she wasn't an only child. She gives me major only child vibes. She's very much a bit of a daddy's girl. We see that, can't you get me out of this, daddy? Why should I be here? Even things like having sushi for lunch, I found really interesting in the 80s.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Like, she brings out this little box with the sushi in it and the Pepsi and stuff, and I think about that would be really bougie for the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
It would have just been when it was starting to cross over and everyone's just bringing their normal packed lunch and she's got this little lunchbox of raw fish and they're floored by it, you know? So you can tell she's she's very much upper class. She doesn't give me mean girl. I don't think she's nasty. I don't think she's out there making other people's lives miserable. She's probably just more ignoring everyone she doesn't think is cool. She only associates with cool people. So you can tell like she's got some sort of history, probably not romantically, but she's got some connection to Andy because he's a jock. She's on the social committee. I think they're of the same tier, social tier in the school. And people like Bender, Allison, and Brian aren't even on her radar, like would not talk to. And I think it's pretty confronting when Bender pretty much says, yeah, right, you're going to go back to like ignoring Brian in the halls. And she might not want to believe that that's the truth, but it is the truth. Because one of her core beliefs is that she cares what other people think about her, and she's not able to be strong enough to do what she wants to do and talk to the people she wants to. It's very much being a social creature and being influenced by the friend groups. And I think we saw that was a big thing in the 80s, and it still is now, but I think with the rise of youth cinema, as we're saying, that was a huge theme, geeks and popular people. You know, and the two shall not mix. And then we even saw things like Can't Buy Me Love and then She's All That later on. Like a lot still inspired by these sorts of tropes.
I just feel like geek, dork, those kind of things. I feel like that was a very, like you're saying, a very 80s style term. And it was, I think it was just very much like categorizing people into these different categories. And a lot of the teen movies of this time too, the three today and just other ones too, just in the 80s, very much had these very like different classes and roles and like different categories of different people. So I liked that this one was kind of like just kind of discussing that or looking into that.
Break down those stereotypes a little bit about why we do these sorts of things. Why do we label each other with these ones? Our character of Claire is a little bit shallow. And it's good to see her sort of look outside of herself. And I think Molly Ringwald does a really good point of still making her likable. Because I think some of these characters, it would be very easy, or those character types. She is basically now the blonde girl from like other movies we're seeing. But that's what I mean. I don't think she's as mean as we see some of those girls be.
I think at first I was like, that's the character I'm thinking I think it's like that's what I think she's gonna be, but then I learned quickly like she's not. I guess that's what maybe I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah,
that wasn't coming up across very well.
How do you find her relationship with the other characters? Because I'd say she probably has the most interactions with Bender and the most interactions with Allison. How do you find her interactions with those people?
I mean, the way that I'm dressed today very much is a Bender and Allison combination, which
I love it.
Which those are the characters I relate with the most, because I was very much that girl that didn't talk very much and that had some stuff at home that wasn't great, that kind of Bender expresses. So I very much relate with like his home life and like her withdrawalness from like people socially. So like that's why I'm like combination, they feel the most like similar to me. But yeah, in regards to how Claire kind of interacts with these two, I think there's definitely like some chemistry, maybe a sexual tension between her and Bender. It's kind of unclear, but like I think, or maybe not really. I think as things progress, that's kind of what I think the film's trying to go for, is kind of that trope of like being mean or like hard on somebody that you kind of have a crush on. I feel like that's kind of what Bender's doing, kind of really pushing her buttons kind of thing.
He really knows how to get a rise out of her.
Yes.
And the shit he says makes me so fucking uncomfortable. But Judd Nelson delivers it in such a way, like, that guy. You have interacted with that guy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And just really quickly, behind the scenes, he did like kind of do that on set as well. and it was kind of a problem. Like, he almost got fired kind of thing. But he was like, method acting kind of thing. But Molly Ringwald was just like, okay, whatever, dude, kind of thing. But yeah, he very much was like embracing that role fully. And then, yeah, I think Allison and Claire, they definitely start off a bit bumpy because I think they just don't share the same language. And they don't quite see eye to eye, but I think by the end of the film, they definitely see that they have a lot more in common than they originally thought. And I think their friendship seems pretty sweet. And I think, like, honestly, out of all the characters, because the way that the movie ends, not to jump ahead too much, but, like, it's a little ambiguous of, like, are these people going to actually talk to each other on Monday morning? We don't know. I don't think so. But I feel like I think out of all of them, though, I feel like Allison and Claire might. But I could be wrong. That's just the impression I got.
I need your take, Melissa, because it always cracks me up whenever I see the meme of the biggest downgrade in movie history with Ali Sheedy going from Allison. That eye roll tells me everything I need to know.
So this is not a 5-star movie for me because it upsets me that much. Like, the makeover at the end infuriates me.
The make under.
Yes, the make under, yeah. Like, come on. Like, what, she puts on a headband and it's like, I can see her now? What are we doing? No. Stupid.
Okay. I love that you take it so personally offensive. That tickles me pink. Pretty pink. I agree. I like original Allison because I like that type of girl. I like a basket case girl. I like a girl that in high school is just dressing the way she wants to dress, all dark, mysterious, and letting out that sort of inner feeling. I think Ali Sheedy talked about it a lot, that like John Hughes gave her the leeway to dress and act the way she felt on the inside. And I think that really comes through. I was having a think about it today. It's reverse Sandy from Grease. Like, so we're Sandy went from...
Love that.
Sandy went from being a good girl to a bad Sandy. And Allison's gone from a basket case to a preppy girl. Now, for me, I do think it is a make under, but if I want to look at it objectively, and we're talking about change and growth in these characters, it's a girl's right to choose that if she wants to try something different, go for it. Maybe that wasn't how she was feeling on the inside anymore. Maybe she didn't have any friends that sort of... Not all of us are very make-up-ly and hair talented. And you need someone to come in and sort of... I always like when I see in movies girls giving other girls a hand with looks, because sometimes we just don't have the skills and we don't have people at home to show us how to do it all. So I don't mind that she's embracing change. I think that's great, and we talk all the time on the show about how costumes and makeup are showing us how our characters are in the moment and their mental state. So I agree. Don't love. It's more that I don't love that they then shoehorn her in with Emilio Estevez. Emilio! Thank you. They have nothing throughout the whole movie, and then at the end I'm like, why? Like, I don't like that. If she wanted to change just for her, go for it. Bender and Claire, as you sort of said, they really do have like a fair bit of chemistry, and we see that trope a lot. And it happens in teenagers where like you do, like all your hormones are raging and it's like, oh my God, do I like this person? Like that love to hate line gets very mixed.
The infamous dancing scene in this movie.
Okay, this is what I was going to bring up next, because this is the one that is parody to death. The ending this and the dancing. Please hit me.
So the dancing in the original script was only... So Molly Ringwald was only the person that was supposed to dance. But she felt like, I'm not that good of a dancer. Like, I'm not really sure about that. So then they kind of added the whole cast to dance. And Molly Ringwald, I don't know how she feels about it now, but in like past interviews, she thought it like hurt the movie, the dancing, like the kind of choreographed dancing scenes. And like, I disagree strongly because it's one of the most iconic parts of this movie.
One of the best
like,
parts of the movie. Yeah.
When I think of Breakfast Club, I think of, you know, all the dance moves and obviously the song that book ends the movie. Like those are the two things I like specifically think of every time I think of the Breakfast Club. And apparently, like, her influence of the moves that she did, because it was mostly improvised, was Belinda Carlisle from the Go-Go's was, like, her inspiration of the dancing.
That's cool. Okay, I really, really want to talk about the dancing.
Yes.
Because we were talking about this and you sent me the gif of Claire. And I'm like, I'm so glad you're going to know the exact... No. It is when she's also this library as a librarian. I'm like, this is my dream library in the school. There is so much high ceilings and windows and natural light. And there's like this big tree looking thing in the middle. And there's 2 stories. I'm like, oh. It's when she's standing on the staircase.
Yes.
And I can't dance. I am rhythmically challenged. This one here, she does this one and she kicks her feet. I want to do that, Melissa. I need to
I believe in you, Kelli.
I might need to put on the song and practice, but I cannot dance like no one's watching because like I always know deep down that I'm watching. So I just need to try. One last big concept I do want to talk about in this film, and I touched on it briefly with the conversation with Bender, makes me quite uncomfortable, is that we're starting to discuss openly in these movies the concept of not just crushes and first love, but virginity. What do you think of sort of these conversations? Because it's not just once. It's a recurring conversation in all these videos, especially in this one. Like, people want to know whether Claire's done it or not. The popular girls, are all doing it. And just this concept of, like, popping a cherry and all that, I think that's a big part of the lexicon. What do you think that's sort of saying about how we're viewing ourselves at the time as young girls in the 80s?
I love the interaction between Ali Sheedy and Molly Ringwald when it's like, if you're gonna answer, like, you're either gonna be a prude or a slut.
Kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
What?
Well, if you say you haven't, you're a prude. If you say you have, you're a slut.
Like, either, like,
so
I was like,
true.
It's so true. It's so true. Like, I think the virginity conversation is so realistic because I feel like that is such the focus in high school. Is like, are you a virgin? Have you done it? Who have you done it with? Like, that is just the topic that just felt like was like on rotation for 4 years. So I think it's very realistic. I think it's also this double-edged sword being a woman, because that's exactly it. It's like, whatever you say, you're either a prude or a slut. There's like no in between. That conversation really reminded me of America Ferrera's speech in Barbie. Extremely tapping into that thought process. You can't be this, but you got to be that. Like, and there's just no winning. And it is so hard to find the right answer and be okay within yourself at the same time. Yeah, it brought up a lot of complex feelings for me, especially. Yeah, so I think, as you sort of mentioned, this is that's one of the biggest things in high school. You talked about John Hughes writing teen problems and making them feel heard and realistic. I think that's a big example of it. This movie, like you said, it's this bottleneck episode. It's this one place, one situation kind of unfolding. And it's basically a therapy session, I feel like, with all of these teenagers. And that's probably my favorite scene, is when they're all on the floor. It's like, we're all on the same level. At this point, we're all speaking the same language. I even like the Easter egg of, like, when Emilio Estevez and all of them are, like, getting really high, and then he screams and, like, the thing shatters.
Why
and
is he so ragey?
This pot is making you aggressive.
The window that he breaks, it says foreign language, and I feel like that's, like, a little, like, tap on, like, they're now, like, they're speaking the same language, like, they've broken through kind of thing. And maybe it's a little too on the nose, but that's kind of, like, what I took from it. And, like, I like that they're all on the ground, like, on the same level with each other, kind of being the most vulnerable, because I feel like this is the scenes where I think it really shines with Molly Ringwald with, like, her acting. Like, I think it's really, really well done. Her being vulnerable and being more open and introspective compared to the beginning of the movie, where I felt like she was a little bit more defensive and had her guards up and kind of had this like I'm better than all of you attitude.
Yeah, and it's really funny because she talks about how it's so hard being popular, and I think to outside ears that's not a real problem, but to her it is, and to her that's her reality, and that's her viewpoint, and that's her perspective, and it doesn't make her feelings any less valid because it's still the experience she's having.
Yeah,
you can't compare it to what everyone else is going through, but it still is an issue that she's dealing with. So I like that it never sort of makes anyone feel better or less than. It's like, here's what I'm going through. So I like that scene a lot. Let's move on to Pretty in Pink. Melissa, this is the one I watched most recently, so it's definitely like sort of on the brain. I love Andrew McCarthy in Mannequin. Okay, that is my other ultimate guilty pleasure other than Grease 2. I want to ride around the back of a motorcycle while Starship plays with him. So I was very excited to see him in Pretty in Pink when I rewatched it a few years ago. Again, I just must have been going through all these like 80s movies and being like, this is a huge blind spot, let's fix this up. I like this one. I would say 16 Candles, bad. Breakfast Club, amazing. Pretty in Pink, good. Yeah. Like, it gives me a good. There's nothing like super wow awesome about it, but then there's nothing like not palatable or like, it's a fine hour 30. There's some stuff I really do like in it, and then other stuff I'm like, there's potential for it to be a better than what it is, and it just doesn't quite meet it.
I very much agree with everything you just said, by the way. That's kind of how my overall view of Pretty Pink is. But yeah, I really like the character of Andy. I really like her fashion. It's awesome. Well, minus one thing, but we'll talk about that. But overall, because I really think it adds to her character. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think...
Great.
Because this movie is very much about like different social classes falling in love or like being together, and like what does that look like kind of thing. And I think her character is more of this like working class family, maybe poorer, a lower social status, but I think she really reflects this like individuality with her clothing, and like it's really creative and like cool, and I find it very like authentic, and I think it really adds just a coolness to her character.
This is definitely to me like the final evolution of the Molly Ringwald isms, because she starts off like with the baby one in 16 Candles, and then she's like a good mid-sized evolution in Breakfast Club. She's definitely one of the anchoring parts of that, but it's not just her movie. Whereas Pretty in Pink, she's like the Blastoise, like she is the heavy hitter of the movie. Yeah. Everything is based off around her, and she carries it well. I agree. The fashion in this one, I love it. There's actually two things there's two dresses I don't like. Can we just talk about it now, please? Because it upsets me greatly.
Yes, and I have something to say as well, so go ahead.
Okay. She didn't ruin just one perfectly good dress. She ruined two perfectly good dresses at the end of that movie. That pink prom dress... Melissa, now that I knew about it, the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh, she's going to make something beautiful, and it's going to be Cinderella, and it's going to be lovely. And then she walked out, and then I went, no. And this time, it was like Jaws. Like, she had the scissors going, and it was like, dun-dun, dun-dun. Like, she's cutting these diagonals going in it, and I'm like, I know what's coming. This fugly, to quote Regina George, that is the this effing dress I've ever seen. I want it to be Cinderella in the sense, not the blue dress, like the pink dress. When she fixed up her mum's prom dress, old dress, and the birds and everything makes it all pretty and gorgeous. Yeah. Like I wanted that moment, and it wasn't. Melissa, tell me about this dress, please.
Yeah, so the costume designer, Marilyn Vance, she was the costume designer actually on Breakfast Club and this movie. Just to talk about Breakfast Club really quick. So the original costume that she was supposed to wear, Molly Ringwald was like, no. Like this isn't Claire's character. It was very much more 80s and triangular. is how she described it.
There was kind of a mishap with my costume for the Breakfast Club, and I didn't really think that it was great for her character. When it actually arrived, I think the color was really off. It was also much more 80s. It was kind of triangular, and I feel like the movie would have looked a lot more dated had I been in that outfit.
And she's really glad that John Hughes was like, okay, and like her and John Hughes just like went to some shopping places, and like Molly Ringwald ended up actually making the outfit for Breakfast Club.
I love that Claire outfit. The boots, the knee-length skirt, the pink top. She is pretty in pink. She looks beautiful in pink.
I'm very glad that they like trusted her.
Yeah.
And that she like had that authority with that character, and it's just like, no, this isn't Claire. Like, this is Claire, and I think she nailed it. So kind of similarly, but also I guess maybe she just didn't really say no this time. Maybe because she felt bad she said no the last time. I'm not sure, but so Marilyn Vance was also the costume designer on this movie, and when Molly Ringwald first saw this dress, she cried.
Dress is so iconic now. I really hated it at the time. It was not really what I had envisioned.
What was your initial reaction when you saw this dress?
I cried. I burst into tears. No one can really look good in this dress. This is not a very flattering dress.
That is the correct reaction, girl. That is it. I would too.
She was like, it was not really what I envisioned for Andy. But like,
nothing about it says Andy from what she's been wearing for the rest of the film.
And apparently, like, she's kept almost all of her costumes from all of her movies, and she did not keep the dress because she hated it that much. But she's like, Molly Ringwald, like, now appreciates it because it's iconic, regardless if you like it or not. It is an iconic dress, but yeah, it doesn't work. Like, the neck part is like way too big, and like it fits her weird, and like it's just. I'm sorry, and no shade to Marilyn Vance, but like, I'm sorry.
A little bit of shade. No. Melissa, I'm going to disagree with you on one big point. I don't think it's an iconic look because I had not seen it before I saw the movie. So that tells me everything I need to know. So I went in blind and was like, no. So I think it's a downer. Whether it's superficial or not, I don't care. Because as we've talked about, we really appreciate the costumes and it tells us about the character. And I love that Molly Ringwald herself is like, that's not their character. Even if it's about this or the other ones, she's innately knows who it is, and she's done that interview and talks about working with John Hughes. He's a great writer and director because he's not precious about what it is. He lets the actors cultivate the character, and I think that comes through a lot. So that dress, no. To get back to the other stuff of the film, I like what it's saying about class, as you sort of said in the film. So it's Andy, she's not growing up with a lot of money, she's raised by a single father. The scenes with her and Harry Dean Stanton.
Love him. Sorry, I just had to give him a clap. I just love him. He's so good.
Specifically the ones where she comes home from a date and she does this scream.
Hey, what?
It happened.
And I giggled when I watched it. It was just it was adorable. It gives me the kicking my legs in the air, like as I'm on the couch sort of reaction to it. It's nice to have such a wonderful first kiss with someone. It does. It gives it. I feel it all over. Like, does he have strong lips as Iona? I want to talk about the character of Iona as well because I love her.
Does he have strong lips?
How can you tell?
Do you feel it in your knees?
I felt it everywhere.
But to Harry Dean Stanton's waiting on the couch for her, and just to have such a frank conversation with his daughter, and I'm sitting there watching it and going like, that's so great to be put in there because not everything is like has to be a mother-daughter conversation. It can be a father-daughter conversation, especially if that's who you're closest to and who you have connection with. And then afterwards, after I thought that, he says, I'm sorry, it has to be me. And I was just like, whoa, the movie's even cognizant of what it's trying to say with this. And she's like, no, I love that it's you.
Being mostly raised by a single dad, like, these scenes just hit, and I love Harry Dean Stanton. I think he's one of the best actors like ever. Just everything I've seen him in, he's just brilliant. And I honestly forgot that he was the dad in this, so that was like such a treat. I was like, yes. I think their relationship's super sweet, and I also very much love that scene where she comes in with the scream, because again, just very relatable, and it's cute and it's sweet, and yeah, I love their relationship between her and her dad. Like, it seems very like real and genuine and loving, and yeah, so that was very nice to see.
I like that we have this love triangle with you've got best friend that you've grown up with who has feelings for you, and I'm glad this term's more outdated, but when I'm watching this movie, it's all I can think of is that very much a friend-zoned sort of guy. And then you have someone, Blaine, who's from a different world than you, like has a lot of money and all that. But throughout this movie, tell me if I'm alone on an island here, I see moments like when she's in her house, and yes, it does look like she doesn't come from a house of wealth, but every other high schooler treats her like she is trash. Like, this girl is nothing, that she's this bush pig, bogan looking girl. And I don't see it. They're telling me like she is the whitest trash, that she is just... Am I not seeing it? Like, she looks perfectly average to me.
It very much was reminding me of Funny Face, where I'm just like...
That they're pretending Audrey Hepburn is, like, unconventionally attractive.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, so I fully agree. Like, that just didn't really work for me. And I think that's maybe the biggest problem with this movie is, like...
Yes,
yeah,
agreed.
That part wasn't believable. And then for me, her and Blaine, like... I didn't see enough contrast really between the two of them. Like, they seemed pretty similar to me. Like, they both like are very like average, like good looking people. It didn't really seem like I didn't get to see anything that really told me like this guy's super wealthy, in my opinion. So like it just felt like a little weird. Like they're
trying to do
similar.
a Romeo and Juliet thing, and it's not paying off at all.
I thought their like demeanor too is too similar. Like, I almost would have rather her and the James Spader character, like, cause it's more of that contrast. But I mean, he just sucks though, obviously, in the movie. But like, I'm just saying, like,
I get your point. Yes.
I just wish it was a little bit more contrast with the love interest, because like it just kind of felt like
people were saying a lot, but that's not reflected in what I'm seeing.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to be that girl at the record store who owned the record store.
Yes!
I was just like, I am like romanticizing in my head, just like being a woman in the 80s working at a record store. Like, that sounds like
it would be the dream gig.
I guess I'm curious to know, how did you feel about the Ducky character, the relationship between Andy and Ducky?
I really like it because it rang extremely true to me that unfortunately we don't always feel an attraction to people, even if we have a platonic friendship with them. That doesn't always transfer into romance, and we can't force that. So I know that there's people that'd be like, I'm Team Ducky, or that I think the original ending was that, you know, she doesn't end up with Blaine, and it got booed, I think they were saying.
She's like, gosh, harsh.
I think it's on the performance of John Cryer. He has a lot of charisma on screen, and the beats they hit with that character are correct. In the sense that you see this friendship, and then you get the scenes of him on his own when he wants to tell her he loves her, and then the heartbreak when she's not reciprocating it, when she's telling him, because she's quite oblivious. And sometimes as a 17-year-old girl, yeah, you are. You don't know the ways of the world yet and understand how other people are feeling. And maybe she doesn't have the self-confidence or self-perception to know that she could probably have that effect on someone else. And especially if you've grown up with a childhood friend, you don't see them in that way. And it's an unfortunate life truth. And I don't think there's anything malicious on either end. I don't think she's negating anything. She's just oblivious.
Yeah.
So his heartbreak when she's falling for someone who's obviously so opposite to him, he's seeing that he has everything, all the opportunities handed to him in life that he's not having. But I love this character for the end scene at the prom when he's waiting on the staircase for her. I think that's also really true, that true friends will rise above any feelings they have and be there for him. So I'm not saying that he needs to be there for her, that she can push him to the side and that's okay. That's not the sentiment I'm getting, but there's just something more realistic about it, that a true friend would be. He doesn't want to see her hurt at all, and I think that's admirable.
I feel like he seems to be the point of contention with this movie, which I think is interesting. But people either find him charming or annoying, but I kind of find that he's a little bit of both, and I like that.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah, I like his energy in his character. Yeah, I completely agree with the ending. Like, I think because he truly loves this girl, like, regardless of like the romantic love. Like, I think he just genuinely like cares for this person, and so he's gonna be the bigger person, and he's gonna be like, you know what, I'm gonna put my feelings aside. I want to be there for my friend, even though it hurts, because I want to be with her or whatever.
And you see that exact moment when Blaine comes in and he sends her off to her, and it's smile, smile, smile. As soon as she's out of shot, the face drops. And I was watching that, I'm like, good on you, John Cryer, because you were just able to portray every thought and feeling in that one thing. The best part for me, the most iconic part, that is what we call a lip sync for your life, ladies. The Try Little Tenderness scene is everything to me. I love this moment. I love that song. I play that song in the car because it is one of the best builds of anything in the history of music. That slow, and it just ramps up until you get to the gotcha, na na na. Like, it's and you let it out. His dancing's great. The reactions that they show from Andy and Iona really interest me, because this kid has just slid in and is performing his heart out. He's the dance like no one's watching. Like, I need to be more like Ducky. Let's like Claire more like Ducky. Andy's reaction is that sort of, this kid's embarrassing himself a little bit, like, and I feel like that's very true to being a teenager, where anything a little bit, people trying to really express themselves or be outside the norm, it sort of looked a bit like this. Iona's expression changes throughout, and I love that because it tells me more of a lady who sort of appreciates someone who can authentically be themselves. And I think Ducky in this moment is being an authentic part of himself and isn't afraid to express himself. And so yes, you might look at it like a little bit like, wow, this kid's quirky, but there's one specific shot, and I will send it to you so it can be posted here right now, of Annie Potts, and she's just sort of a little bit in awe of it. And I feel like that's how I would sort of be if I saw some kid bust into my record store and just do this Otis Redding song, because that's a throwback as well. Like, and she's a lover of, she's come from the 60s. She's a lover of that style of music. So to see someone appreciate it, I think she gets a kick out of it.
It's definitely a highlight of the movie. Like, it's something I think about when I think about this movie, is like, oh yeah, he's gonna give it all he's got. I love a scene where somebody's like singing or dancing and like you're saying, like just being authentic to themselves, which I think that's kind of, I think ultimately what the lesson is for Andy in this movie, just like kind of accepting herself more and like going for what she wants, kind of thing. But I don't even know if she fully gets there. Maybe like we kind of talked about, like, I don't know if this movie like quite hits it out of the ballpark, but like I feel like that's what it's trying to do or trying to say with the Andy character, since that's our main character of the movie, is like be more like Ducky, just like be authentic and like embrace yourself and love yourself and have that confidence to, just express and be yourself type of thing.
I agree. I think nowadays if you made this movie, it would be, screw you, Blaine, I've got into fashion school and I'm going to make it on my own. I think that's the ending we would do for a 2010s onwards type of movie, where it is about the female character finding more self-empowerment. But it is nice that this sort of does live in the 80s, and we want our teenage characters to find that romance. And as I sort of said, it is that Romeo and Juliet allegory, illusion sort of thing, so it makes sense. But I found it very, very interesting with Andrew McCarthy in the Bratz documentary, talking about how the ending was just her and Ducky walking in and cut, and it got booed and they had to rewrite it. And the fact, I thought about you so much, that he had to come back and they did the reshoots in one day and he wore this wig, because all I could thought of, do you wear wigs?
Do you wear wigs? No, I do not.
Have you worn wigs?
No, I have not.
Will you wear wigs?
Maybe.
When will you wear wigs?
But yes, we did need to have the more fairy tale ending. I think it works enough for the film, but again, as I sort of said, this film has some things that I'm like, the potential is there to be so much more, and it just wasn't. I think of also the scene of the party, you know, when he takes her to his friend's house. I think that upstairs bedroom scene, you could have pushed a lot more and done something. It's a bit in there, like, I get where you're going, but it doesn't get all the way there. What I did like though, and I thought was really true to being a teenager and starting off to date, is like, you sort of like this person, but you don't know what to do. So it's like, oh, we could go here and do this thing. No. But, oh, how about we go there and do this and, like, that's not really true.
Again, I think I struggle with the romance part of this movie the most. Like, it just, Andrew McCarthy wasn't doing it for me at all. And, like, I thought they didn't have any chemistry. So it just didn't work for me. But it's just like, oh, that's cute, whatever. You know, I am still a romantic at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, that's who she wanted, and she gets her little happy ending with the kiss in the parking lot. And like, Kelly, If You Leave is like an all-timer for me.
Here we go.
That was, somebody made me a mixtape in high school. It was on there, and I was like, thank you, because like, I love like 80s synth British pop stuff. Like, that is like so my jam. So like,
John Hughes really crafted the soundtrack of a generation with these movies. Everyone that we're talking about has a soundtrack that absolutely goes off. In the same way, I would parallel it to what James Gunn's done with Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like that's in a similar vein where you're making soundtracks that live outside of the movie. If You Leave, I like that one too. So one of my favorite local acts to go see is VHS Pirates, and they only do 80s movie covers. It is everything. It is everything. I've seen it multiple times. So they play, I really thought they would do Pretty in Pink, but they play If You Leave. And it is the right choice. And they always end on, I've had the time of my life. And I always throw myself at Ellen. Please insert the clip of Ryan Gosling going, I can do the lift from Crazy Stupid Love.
Okay.
You know the big move at the end of Dirty Dancing where Patrick Swayze picks up Jennifer Grey?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay.
So I tell girls I can do the move. I put on the song, Time of Your Life. I do the big move, and they always want to have sex with me.
Oh my God.
But then the encore is always, Don't You Forget About Me. And it brings the house down because, as we sort of said, this is the soundtrack that everyone has at some point in their life relates to. And I think, I have a question for you, Melissa. These movies were referenced a lot in the pop culture we had when we were growing up. So I talked about Family Guy. Degrassi is another thing I see it in because they do a whole Breakfast Club episode. Holly J, when she's talking to Toby, talks about like, I'm not giving you my underwear. Like in the 2000s, we saw a lot of these references. And I think I've been working on the theory for a long time. Every 20 years or so is when we're seeing these cycles come back in because people that grew up and had their teen years in the 80s started making the content in the 2000s and have a love and affection for when they were growing up. So now it's a 20-year period since Y2K, and we're seeing a lot of that in what's our current culture. Do you think because when we were growing up in the 2000s, as I sort of said, everything was a love letter to the 80s. Friends episodes centered on the 80s and all that. We grew up knowing a lot of 80s culture. Do you think kids nowadays grow up knowing 80s culture, or is it only in the last 20 years of what they're knowing? Because I don't know if you could go on the street and say The Breakfast Club and a normal person knows what you're talking about. And I'm talking outside of this community, because if you're watching us, thanks. But you are probably a lover of film and you are seeking these things out. I don't know if naturally Breakfast Club is still part of the conversation. What's your thoughts?
I think it's a good question. I'm not sure, because I do agree with, like, I think there's a lot more 90s style and like Y2K stuff coming out now, which is interesting. Like, there's literally a movie coming out later this year called Y2K by A24. And like, an Eyeside of the TV Glow, oh my gosh, that's like filled with 90s and like nostalgia kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know, like I guess watching the Bratz documentary, like when Andrew McCarthy's like ordering like lunch at that random place, and we don't see the person, but you could just tell by the voice, like it's probably a younger person that's working at this food service place, and they were just kind of like asking what he was doing, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm making this documentary on these movies from the 80s, and I think he even mentions like The Breakfast Club, and they were like, sounds familiar, not sure. It was something like that, and I thought that was interesting. So I would say probably not, but I don't really know. I think it's a good question. I wish I had a better answer, but I'm not really sure.
No, I think also after watching the documentary, I was like, history really did repeat itself a little bit with the Disney Channel kids. And I think that's more what we're going to start seeing, is that tended to be the next generation of kids that were lumped together as this brand and had a bit of fallout from it. So I think that's where we're going to start seeing it next, because that's probably the reference point that we would have now is Hannah Montana or Selena Gomez or Demi Lovato, like rather than the Brat Pack. Sure. But saying that, I think Molly Ringwald is our first ever screen teen queen. Like that's the title I would give her.
Yeah, I like it.
The mantle got passed to Lindsay Lohan for our generation, in my opinion. Like another redheaded gorgeous actress that's going to have a string of 3 movies: Freaky Friday, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, and Mean Girls. Like that defines a generation, and she needs more props. And I think she's just phenomenal in these movies. And where you land on your thoughts on the movies, there's no denying that she's a presence on film, and she really did shape a generation.
Yes, Kelly, yes.
Melissa, I have loved talking all these teen movies with you, specifically because like it's nice to talk with someone who's had a lot of similar experience. Even if we didn't have the same upbringing and same backgrounds, it's just been cool that we've watched these movies and been able to connect with it. So, like, just thank you, love. Tell us where people can find us, please.
If you're new here, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what your favorite Molly Ringwald movie is, or 1980s coming of age movies, because that was the time. Please let us know. Otherwise, we're on X, TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd. You can find us all those places. And until next time, oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Give me a second.
Until next time, don't you forget about me.
Freeze frame.